Hello everyone, Books with Banks back again. Today I will be reviewing the first book I've read this summer, R.F. Kuang's The Poppy War, book one of this trilogy. Today this will be a mostly spoiler-free review. I might reveal a couple things that happen in the first tenth or so of the book, but no specifics beyond that point. The Poppy War was published by Harper Voyager in 2018. Books 2 and 3, The Dragon Republic and The Burning God, respectively, have been published in the past few years as well. Not to give too much away up front, but I will absolutely be continuing on to read those sequels. Kuang is relatively new but extremely popular writer in the fantasy genre these days, and it's about time that I finally dove into see what the series is all about. So quickly, a little bit of context for why I'm reading this, and I mentioned this in my May TBR as well, but I'm studying genocide and fantasy lit, and so many of my professors, friends, and family have recommended this series as basically essential reading for that area of interest. And my wife is nearing the end of book 3 right now, Burning God, so I'm catching up to her. And no matter what the book is, honestly, I believe having someone to talk to about whatever you're reading almost always enriches that experience. Okay, so the review. The Poppy War is the first book of an epic fantasy trilogy, a secondary world set in a setting inspired by East Asia. As for more specific genres, the book is equal parts magic, battle academy, and military fantasy. The story centers on Fang Runin, or Rin for short, a teenage girl, an orphan from the previous war. We start with her studying to get into a super prestigious battle or war college called Sinigard. Apologies if any of my pronunciations are way off. Sorry about that. But Rin needs to escape her life in poverty and under the control of opium-dealing adoptive parents in one of the more rural and impoverished regions of this land. Speaking of which, the setting. Rin, her family, friends, some of her enemies and classmates, and so on, they are all part of the Nikan or Nikara Empire, our stand-in for China. Nikan has a long, bloody, and genocidal history of conflicts with the crescent-shaped island nation off their northeast coast, the Mugen Federation, our stand-in for Japan. Every time the Mugen have tried to conquer Nikan, this was called a Poppy War. At the end of the Second Poppy War, the Hesperians, basically the British or some sort of European Western power stand-in, they got involved to save Nikara after seeing the destruction, possibly sacrifice, genocide, atrocity of the smaller island province of Spear off the southeastern coast of Nikan. Spear is basically our stand-in for Taiwan. Yeah, R.F. Kuang has explained that she intentionally based this story on the Second Sino-Japanese War, and just for a bit more historical context if you wanted to look into that a bit more. At the time the book starts, tensions are once again brewing between Nikan and Mugen, and it seems a third Poppy War is imminent. One more quick note about the world. Everyone from Spear is thought to have died, but apparently they were these beastly warriors is how they're described, possibly wielding magical shamanistic powers. This idea of what were the people of Spear feeds nicely into two facets of the book. One, it sets up these incredibly central themes and conversations about mass atrocity, genocide, dehumanizing language and propaganda. And two, Rin's classmates, professors, and her own understanding of Spear help to ease readers into the magical fantasy elements of the book, most of which has to do with communication with or channeling powers of any of the 64 gods. This book at least starts out pretty light on the fantasy stuff, just so you're warned if you typically like more magical elements right up front and more fantasy shenanigans throughout your entire reading experience. Now, for strengths and weaknesses. Strengths, pretty early on, Kuang lets us know that Rin is an atypical heroic protagonist. Rin is driven by ambition, so much so that she doesn't always seem to mind who she hurts to pave a better path for her own success. She even hurts herself, burning herself with candle wax, for instance, early on just to stay awake, to study, to get into Synagard. I really enjoyed how Kuang used this to foreshadow much of what was to come and the character journey Rin was about to embark on. At first, Rin's sort of blind, uncaring ambition makes sense, and in a way, it always makes sense, as in Kuang always makes Rin's decisions believable and understandable. But at first, especially when Rin exists at the intersection of numerous oppressed identities, and she needs to overcome that oppression, her more utilitarian, no holds barred approach seems appropriate, necessary, and even really exciting. We're really rooting for her for the most part during the whole academy section of the book. And then Kuang slowly complicates our relationship with Rin and our concept of rooting for her by steadily giving her more and more power to make more or increasingly morally gray decisions that affect more than just her own personal journey and her own personal ambition. Another strength I like another strength I really like the way we talk about race and genocide here, with one big exception that I'll get to in the much shorter weaknesses section. There's a lot in here about colorism, racism, and governments determining what regions of their empire are okay to maybe sacrifice, usually based on racist of ideas of like, oh, the people who live there aren't really the same as the rest of us. Like I said above, a lot of excellent use of usually explicit, dehumanizing language to describe the people of Spear, the darker skinned people of Rin's home province, and of course the Mugen Federation. And then most of the other stuff I want to say about genocide and atrocity would actually get really into spoilers, and I don't want to spoil anything. But remaining pretty vague, you do witness such atrocities later on in the book, and Kuang also lets us see individuals grappling with their personal past crimes as sort of microcosm of an entire nation grappling with its past crimes. In the specific way magic and fantasy works here makes this connection clearer. Again, I don't want to say too much or give too much away. If you've read the book, I'm sure you'll kind of see what I'm trying to say there. But yeah, between the personal and national, the magic really empowers certain characters to take mass atrocities into their own hands. I guess is a non-spoilery way I could say it. Okay. So, and to kind of bear more of the burden of guilt of such a thing than one might have to in the real world. Yeah, really interesting stuff. Really, really kind of cool ideas she's playing around with there. Kuang also gives the characters plenty of time to comment on and reflect after witnessing these atrocities. Again, without giving anything away, Rin has a couple conversations near the end of the book, one with a friend from school about a really horrible event, and then she has a similar conversation with another character and a friend from the war after school. Both characters feel pretty differently in their response to a certain atrocity, and kind of lessons to be learned from this thing, and both give Rin and the readers plenty of that muddy gray area to play around in, and hold those important sort of like ethical debates in our heads, and make sure that nothing is really tied up with a neat bow at the end here. You're still left very much reeling, reeling and reflecting on the different points of view that Rin's friends have about certain atrocities in the book. Also, quick shout out to the character Jiang. I really like how Kuang wrote him and used him in the story. Cool dude. Really excited to see more about his history and just his, I guess, like purpose or role within the rest of the series. Weaknesses. Okay, so now what I didn't like so much, or at least what gave me pause, I tore through this book in less than a week, so I clearly had a good time with it, and many, if not all, of my critiques might be addressed or at least smoothed over in the sequels. We'll see. But for now, my first critique, brief note about the genocide thing, with how much they talk about the Mugen Federation soldiers as killing machines and monsters, and how much of this type of language is used to characterize the enemy and dehumanize them. I would have liked to see at least a little glimpse into part of the story from a Mugen perspective or the Mugen perspective. We don't really get that, or at least not yet. So I did feel like that kind of piece of the important genocide conversation was missing here. Then the other weakness, this book is basically in two halves. You have the academy first chunk and then everything after. While I tend to prefer fantasy more like the second military half of this book than the battle school academy stuff at the beginning, I think I actually preferred the school part here, mostly because of the found family and secondary characters at the academy. I felt a stronger connection to that first cast of side characters than I did to the essentially like military unit soldier side characters of the second half. All intriguing, those soldiers, sure, but after their initial introductions, I never felt like I got enough unique moments or time with any one of them individually to help them really stand out beyond whatever peculiar abilities that they might have. But yeah, those are the only two weaknesses. Just wanted to mention those real quick before wrapping up. And yeah, all in all, I really enjoyed this book. I think it will undoubtedly be referenced in my current academic career, things I'm writing. I would highly recommend this to anyone looking for more military fantasy, but also anyone looking for less of that Eurocentric medieval style that's dominated the genre for so long. If you want to move away from that, this is a really great option, I think. And of course, if you want to read something that really deals with atrocities, or at least prompts interesting conversation and debate about mass atrocity and genocide, I think this is a super easy kind of common sense recommendation. But not a book if you're looking for something maybe a little more cozy or optimistic. A lot of my takes here might change drastically as I continue with the series, but hopefully I've given you all a good sense of my impressions with the book and a good sense of whether or not you'll be giving it a try soon. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video and haven't already, please like, subscribe, share, etc. It really helps the channel grow. With more growth, I get a wider range of feedback in the comments, all of which helps to improve my skills on BookTube and just my skills with fantasy fiction analysis in general. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.